Good day and welcome everyone to the IATA Asia Pacific DGR Roadshow 2021. My name is David Wee and I will be the host for this webinar. I would like to first thank all of you for taking time off your busy schedule to join us today. Right. First of all, and despite COVID-19 pandemic, our industry has actually adjusted quite quickly to the changed business environment, and we experienced good growth in cargo despite a weak air travel business condition. Quite unfortunately, we have not done much better in terms of safe handling of dangerous goods. We continue to see a lot of incidents involving lithium battery carriage. FAA recorded 344 aviation-related thermal incidents involving lithium batteries carried as cargo or baggage since 2006. In 2021, up to the month of October, we still have about 40 incidents. So part of it is due to the rise of demand for lithium battery, but a large part of it is due to a lack of efficient system and the lack of awareness to mitigate the risk in handling lithium battery. Also from the human factor perspective, there are still room for improvement on the oversight on the DG handling competency of our staff. So every one of us have the responsibility to make air transportation safe and reliable in order to earn the trust of our consignors to continue air shipping their goods. And that is the reason why IATA hosted this roadshow today, inviting our subject matter experts from Geneva to share with you our latest initiatives and program to help make their work safer and to maintain trust in the relationship with your clients. So before we start, I would like to run through some administration. So I would like to draw your attention to the competition law guideline. The webinar is being conducted in full compliance with antitrust and competition law. So discussion on pricing, charging mechanism, allocating markets, customers, suppliers, and agents are prohibited. So the agenda is shown on this slide. I do want to draw your attention to the Q&A sessions. We'll have two Q&A sessions, one session in the middle and the other at the end of the presentation. Your microphone and videos will be switched off throughout the presentations, and we will turn them on only during the Q&A. Please also take note that this session will be recorded. We have installed actually a little surprise for everyone at the end of the webinar, and I hope you can stay till the end to hear it from us. So thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Vinod Goyal, our Asia Pacific Regional Director, to give you an update on Asia Pacific region. Vinod, off to you.
Thank you, David, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Singapore. So as David mentioned, my name is Vinod Goyal, and I'm the Regional Director for Airports and External Relations. And as part of that portfolio, cargo and safety, security are both part of my portfolio. And so we're very pleased that to hold this DGR workshop. In normal times, we would be doing this in many of the countries in person, but because of the unique situation we are in, David has organized this in a virtual format for the region. And you know, I might just take a minute to introduce David, because for many of you, you're probably seeing him for the first time on screen. So David joined us as the cargo manager and lead for the region a few months ago, and he has quickly come up to speed with the issues and is working on many initiatives in the region. So for matters such as this or on the overall cargo agenda for Asia Pacific, please feel free to reach out to him. So before we get into the substantive matters of DGR, I want to give a quick update on where we are in the region in terms of the industry. So if we look at Asia Pacific, and you know, COVID has had a devastating impact on aviation, passengers and cargo throughout the world initially, but cargo has been the good story, and you'll probably hear a little more about that later. And even in Asia Pacific, cargo is back to pre-COVID levels. Domestic traffic is recovering slowly, but the biggest worry for us in Asia Pacific is the lack of growth or recovery in the international passenger market. Even as we speak, international travel is down anywhere from 93 to 95% for the region. So why is that? And why is that happening? That's because of travel restrictions. And if you go to the next slide, David, you can see that travel restrictions were put in place throughout the world early last year. But over time, we have seen a relaxation in most of the regions. But unfortunately, Asia Pacific remains closed in terms of border restrictions. And for those of you who have tried to travel internationally in Asia Pacific, you would know how difficult it is, and in many cases impossible, because some of the states still have the borders closed for visitors. What has been the impact of this? If you go to the next slide, one of the key impacts of this has been the loss of connectivity. And as you know, for cargo professionals, connectivity is key to getting cargo from one point to the other. And unfortunately, with the almost total shutdown of passenger traffic, cargo aviation connectivity has been impacted. Now again, we have seen a recovery from most of the regions, but Asia Pacific is really lagging behind. So next slide, what are we doing about it? So IATA has been working with the governments and the other authorities in this region to develop national roadmaps for reopening of borders, looking at vaccination protocols and testing protocols to allow passenger travel to restart, which will be key to getting airlines and aircraft to move, key to restoring connectivity, and key to getting belly space for much of the cargo. And the way we are saying can be done is through digital health certificates, including the IATA Travel Pass. So we are working on it, and we are hoping to see some recovery over the next few months. But in the meantime, the good news continues to be cargo, and we need to make sure that we are moving cargo securely, safely, and efficiently. And as part of that, the DGR goods are one of the areas where we need to be absolutely correct and on the ball. So that was a quick introduction. I wish you all a great conference for the next hour or so, couple of hours. And back to you, David.
Right. Thank you, Vinod, for the insightful sharing. Coming up next, we will have David Brennan, Assistant Director, Cargo Safety and Standards, to provide you the key DGR changes in the year 2022. So David, over to you. Feel free to take control.
Which should be the opening slide for my regulatory update. And as Vinod said, normally this time of year, I would be enjoying traveling around Southeast Asia and very much enjoying catching up with people in the different cities that we would hold these workshops in. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do that for the last 2 years, and so here I am providing this to you virtually. So what we're going to look at, there we go, is the summary of the changes that you'll see in the 2022 edition of the Dangerous Goods Regulations. And what these are changes to the content of the Dangerous Goods Regulations based on decisions taken by the members of the IATA Dangerous Goods Board. So the Dangerous Goods Board comprises 12 members elected by Cargo Services Conference. So these are representatives from 12 airlines that are responsible for dangerous goods within their airline. We also have revisions to Appendix H, which is the guidance on implementation of competency-based training and assessment. And I won't say very much about that because following me will be Candy Chan, who will provide an update on competency-based training and assessment and Appendix H and what we've done there. For next year's book, we've also added Appendix I. It's something we do every 2 years to provide advance information of the changes that will come into effect in 2023. And we know some of these as they've already been agreed by the United Nations Subcommittee of Experts on the Transport of Dangerous Goods. And so we know, for example, new UN numbers and some of the changes around packaging and other classification, other areas where all of the modes tend to align 100% to the UN. We also know what the ICAO Dangerous Goods Panel has agreed up until we produced the DGR, so we could add those in. And that provides useful information for shippers in particular, so that they can start looking ahead at what they need to maybe change for their logistics systems. So getting into the changes, one of the things that the board agreed was to bring in references to states, or rather territories, that are subject to state jurisdiction. So we have a number of places in the world where the state, they're a territory of a state, and those states have state variations. So there's some examples you can see on the screen. We've got Cocos Islands, which is in the Indian Ocean. It's an Australian territory, and if you're shipping goods to Cocos, then you have to follow Australian state variations. We've got Greenland, which is a Danish territory, Guadeloupe, which is a French territory, and Guam in the Pacific, which is a US territory. And this is something that has caught shippers out. It's also caught operators out, where they, when they're doing the acceptance check, weren't aware that these territories were subject to state variations and that they had to follow those. And so we've added those into the list of states, and then in the cross-reference where you'll see GUG, it'll say C, United States, USG state variations. We've made a few changes in the list of dangerous goods. There's not a lot, just a bit of fine-tuning. The majority of the changes to the list will come in 2023 when the UN changes come through. We had an error. We have an organic peroxide, tert amyl peoxy 3,5,5-trimethyl hexanoate, which was shown as forbidden, and it should be shown as UN 3105. It is permitted. We inadvertently added special provision A2 against UN 3094, corrosive liquid water reactive NOS, and that's been removed. And when we'd made the changes, we brought in a new proper shipping name, dangerous goods in articles. We neglected to add that proper shipping name to the cross-reference for fuel system components, so that's been fixed as well. Packing instructions, and probably the biggest change next year, and I think it's one that a lot of people have already been talking about, is that the Dangerous Goods Board decided to delete Section 2 of Packing Instructions 965 and 968. So currently, in today's book, you'll see that we have Section 1A, fully regulated for the larger cells and batteries, so cells over 20 watt hours, batteries over 100 watt hours. Section 1B is cells that do not exceed 20 watt hours and batteries that don't exceed 100 watt hours. These are fully regulated, but just don't have to be in UN specification packaging. Just a strong rigid outer packaging requires a shipper's declaration, Class 9 lithium battery hazard label, cargo aircraft only label, and the lithium battery mark. And Section 2 is the ones that are just a box. Yes, they have a CAO label. Yes, they've got the lithium battery mark, but most of the provisions don't apply. And these are designed to just move through the system. And this creates an issue for the operators that now, under changes to Annex 6 operation of aircraft, must perform a specific safety risk assessment, and this includes what they're carrying, how much, where they load it, and that's inconsistent with the provisions for Section 2, and so the board has decided that will be deleted. But to provide shippers with a sufficient time to transition, you can still use Section 2 until the end of March 2022. So that just eases the time for shippers to adopt Section 1B, and if they've got packages pre-built, that they can use those up before the end of March. Also in lithium batteries, it's really just some clarification in packing instructions 966 and 969, which apply to lithium batteries packed with equipment. The existing language wasn't very clear for Section 1 that identifies that the UN specification packaging either has the cells or batteries packed in it, and then that UN specification packaging is inside and outer packaging with the equipment, or the equipment and the cells and batteries packed in an inner packaging are packed into a UN specification outer packaging. That's up to the shipper to determine. Certainly it's a challenge for acceptance people to know that the shipper has complied when the UN specification packaging is inside the outer packaging and it's not an overpack. But at least the language is now as clarified that those are the two clear options. Section 2, this is an area we're going to have to change again. We thought we had it fixed, but in the discussions at the IATA Dangerous Goods panel just last week, this is an area that still needs more work, and so we're going to have to change it again for 2023. There's still some discussion going with the panel because we haven't quite agreed. We didn't have enough time last week to resolve it completely. We hope to do that in the next few weeks so that it can be properly addressed in the next edition of the technical instructions and then, of course, in the dangerous goods regulations. We've also made some changes in radioactive material, and it's more clarification, where we've had some events, I say events, where shippers have offered a radionuclide that is not shown in table 10.3a. And that has caused some issues at acceptance because the people doing the acceptance of the package have looked at shipper's declaration, looked at the radionuclide, looked at the activity, gone to table 10.3a, and they can't find it. And so they've said, well, that's it, it's not going anywhere. However, there is provision for the shipper to use table 10.3b to determine the A1 or A2 value of a radionuclide that's not shown in 10.3a. It's a very conservative approach, and so what we've done is make that more visible, and we've added a new requirement in 10.8 for the shipper's declaration, such that when the shipper does use that to determine the applicable A1 or A2 values for an unlisted radionuclide, that they must add a statement on the shipper's declaration, and it would say something like, table 10.3b used, only beta or gamma emitting nuclides are known to be present. And in that way, the acceptance person can go and look at 10.3b and from the values shown in that, verify that what is being offered is within the allowable limits for a type A package. Obviously, if it's a type B package, then it has to be within the certificate of design. And the importance of this is this particular radionuclide is used in medical treatment, and so it's got a fairly short half-life, and there's a need for it to move as quickly as possible. So we don't want them being stopped because people can't determine that it is within the right limit. I mentioned Appendix H. We've made a lot of revisions to that content of that and restructured it to provide a clearer indication of the recommended processes for development, maintenance of a competency-based training and assessment approach to dangerous goods training. And I will stress, it is recommendations. It is there as guidance to training developers, to operators, to employers, and to regulators, to everybody, that these are the steps and this is the process that should be followed. And what we've done is we've added quite a number of flowcharts to support the users to understand and apply the recommendations. And we believe that they will really help everybody follow the process as we move towards competency-based training and assessment. Moving now to the impending changes. So these are the things that are in the 22nd revised edition of the UN model regulations. So we know that they've been adopted. We also know what the ICAO Dangerous Goods panel had agreed up to their meeting, DGP Working Group 21, that was in May of this year, and the changes that the Dangerous Goods Board may have agreed, although most of those are in the DGR for next year. What we don't know, or we didn't know at the time, is what the Dangerous Goods panel agreed at their meeting that concluded last week, and of course the changes that the IATA Dangerous Goods Board decided at their meeting in October of this year and may decide in March of next year. But the things we do know. So we've got some changes in the list of dangerous goods, not a lot of change. We have one new entry, UN 3550 Cobalt Dihydroxide powder. I don't see a lot of this moving in air transport. It's a raw material mined largely in Southern Africa, typically moved by sea to Europe and North America for processing. We may see a little bit in air transport, but I don't expect to see very much. The UN decided that there was no value in having two really almost identical proper shipping names, one being extracts aromatic liquid and the other extracts flavouring liquid. They decided that really that could be combined into a single entry, which will be extracts liquid with light type that will say for flavour or aroma. So, as I say, what you'll see in next year is that entry has been struck through. That shows in Appendix I, obviously 2023, it will disappear completely and we will just have the one entry. Some special provisions, two that have been added to address large articles that contain dangerous goods. One is for UN 3548 articles containing miscellaneous dangerous goods, NOS. This is where it was identified that you've got very large articles like aircraft landing gear that contain hydraulic fluid, and the hydraulic fluid may be classified as an environmentally hazardous substance. The other one is for a new type of magnetic resonance imaging machine that, rather than using a refrigerated liquefied helium, just uses gaseous helium. And so we have a change there for UN 3538 articles containing non-flammable, non-toxic gas, NOS. And so at the moment, if you want to move anything under those two UN numbers, it requires an approval from the state of origin and of the state of the operator. From 2023, these will be able to move without needing an approval, but it will be restricted to articles containing an environmentally hazardous substance and an article containing only a Division 2.2 gas without a subsidiary hazard. And we have some new packing instructions to address being able to ship those articles. Lithium batteries, we don't want to leave lithium batteries alone. We like playing with lithium batteries. Part of that is we want to keep an eye on how we can manage the risks and reduce them wherever possible. This change, though, has come about because at the moment we require a telephone number on the lithium battery mark. There's been discussion at the UN subcommittee over quite a few meetings as to, well, what is the purpose of the phone number? What value does it provide? And is it necessary? And so after quite a bit of discussion, the subcommittee agreed that it really doesn't add any significant value to anybody, and it can be removed from the mark. And so the new mark that we'll see in 2023 will just have a space for the UN number or UN numbers. The existing mark can still be used until the end of December 2026, so that's to recognise that people may have pre-printed packages, they may have packages that are already prepared for transport, they may have lots of stocks of the marks. We know that they're applied typically as a label, but even though it's called a mark, and to allow all of that to be used up without having to just be thrown out, there is this transitional period. In the DGR at the moment, there's an allowance for shippers to replace labels that are found to be missing or damaged after the acceptance check. Obviously, if a label is damaged or missing when it's offered for transport, well, that means that it won't pass the acceptance check and it fails and the goods will be rejected. But it can happen that after acceptance and the goods are moving, that the label gets scuffed or comes off somehow, and then the operator must replace it, make sure the proper hazard communication is available. But we don't allow that for marks, and yet we've got lots of different marks that are now in use. We've got, as you can see on the screen, the limited quantity mark, accepted quantity mark, the lithium battery mark, which I was talking about before, and environmentally hazardous mark. And yet if these are found to be damaged or missing after acceptance, the operator can't replace them, and yet they are important pieces of hazard communication. And so from 2023, there's been a change to say that marks and labels can be replaced where these are found to be damaged or missing. So that will help. So that's what I have. Those are the changes that we'll see in the body of the book. A brief indication of Appendix H, which, as I say, Candy will go into much more detail on shortly. And then what's going to come in 2023. And of course, there will be much more in 2023 because the ICAO Dangerous Goods panel, as I mentioned, has finished their work. They've now agreed their changes, and those will be added to what we see for 2023. So with that, I will say thank you very much and hand over to the next presenter. You're up, Ben. All good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, David. So welcome, everyone. So you just heard from Dave on the upcoming changes to the DGR in 2022. So awesome presentation, Dave, and some very important points to note. Thank you, Dave, for that. Now, I'm not a mind reader or a mentalist of any kind, but I'm sure there are some of you wishing that there was an easy and seamless way to have these DGR changes implemented in your operations. Well, the good news is that Christmas has come early for you. Why? Because today we have a solution that does that and much more. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Ben Behannon. The topic I will be presenting to you today is DG Autocheck. So in the next 20 minutes or so, I will give you a flavor of IATA DG Autocheck and how it is going to change the way dangerous goods acceptance checks are done in the future. So mainly I will cover three aspects. Firstly is why we have DG Autocheck. Secondly, what it does, what are the key benefits. And finally, I'll give you a sneak preview to the solution and how, as I call it, the magic happens. So firstly, let's look at why we have DG Autocheck and what are the key pain points that it aims to address. Now, as you know, as much as we have moved in other areas in cargo with e-available, e-freight, one record, however, dangerous goods seems to have missed the flight, so to speak, because we are still stuck with primitive and legacy manual paper-based processes. So staff who accept dangerous goods, they still use paper checklists, manually refer to the DGR, manually complete the acceptance check reports. Now, while change has been knocking on our doors for a while, the sound has never been more louder than now. Why? Because one of the lessons that we have learned during the recent pandemic is that business as usual is no longer an option. Paper and manual processes is no longer an option. To share with you an anecdote from one of our customers, they told us that during the height of the pandemic, they had a spike in air cargo shipments due to lockdowns and quarantines, and they faced a shortage in staff due to that. And that resulted in delays, and it got so bad that at one point the trucks were queuing up in the roads leading to the airport, and they were warned and even fined by the police and the authorities for creating the traffic jam. So while digitization was always on their agenda, but it was a turning point for them where they realized that manual and paper-based process no longer an option for them. And it's not just for them. As an industry, we know that we need to move forward. We need to leverage the modern technology which is available to us today to make things more easier, more efficient, while keeping an uncompromising focus on safety. And this is precisely where DG Autocheck comes into the picture. So DG Autocheck brings that much awaited automation and digitalization to the DG acceptance processes. So basically, it's an automated compliance solution which helps to perform the acceptance checks. So it uses a DGD, a declaration form, as an input. So it can be a paper declaration form which can be scanned and uploaded in the system, or an electronic DGD. What the system does is it takes the data which is on that form, on the DGD, it automatically checks in an automated way, it checks for compliance against all the applicable rules in the DGR, and it presents the results to the staff. Now, system performs the documentation check and it facilitates the physical check. It helps, so it shows what are the marks, labels required, etc. So to enable the acceptance staff to perform the check. And overall, DG Autocheck ensures an end-to-end digital process. So it gives of course a global visibility on the shipments, and there are powerful reports as well. Now, in a sense, what it does is DG Autocheck replaces the paper checklist that you have today with an automated and digital means. DG Autocheck is available in two versions. So first is the desktop version, which is normally used for performing the documentation check. There is also a companion app which is available, which can be installed on tablets, and then you can take that with you to your warehouse when you do the physical check. In terms of features, DG Autocheck comes with all the bells and whistles of a digital solution. It's of course eDGD ready. Not only that, it can accept electronic DGD, but when you start with the paper declaration form, at the end of the check, you will have the electronic DGD which can be produced by the system. There is also data which can be exported from the system for creating the NOTOC. You can create custom checklists in the system. You have audit trail of every action. You can manage your certifications, much more. And the icing on the cake, so to speak, is the business intelligence reporting. And I will touch upon this a bit later. In terms of benefits, of course, it's a digital solution, so it is automated. It's much more faster, ensures your regulatory compliance. Now, the feedback that we have from our customers, from the users who actually use the system, they tell us, of course, it's much more, it saves them a lot of time, especially the more critical part of the checks. It saves them a lot of time. They tell us that it's always consistent. They tell us that the system is able to catch errors which they might have missed, but the system always gets them, so it gives them that confidence to them. And the most interesting is that they tell us that it is fun to use. And we're absolutely delighted to hear that, because we have designed the system so that it is easy to learn, easy to use, so that within a couple of hours, people can just start using the system. I've had people, high level, like we had the CEO of an organization on a call with us, and he was telling us, now I can start doing dangerous goods checks. I mean, the point is that it is that simple. And as well with that, of course, there is, we are delighted that, they are able to, they find it very user friendly, and they use that. But of course, something that is not funny is safety. And that safety remains the #1 priority for DG Autocheck. That is the raison d'etre, as they say in French. So the reason for existence for DG Autocheck. Now, DG Autocheck ensures compliance with the DGR, with the regulations. And how does it do that? By always ensuring that the staff is always referring to the latest DGR edition, whether it's addendums, they are immediately in the system. So the staff don't have to worry about being tired, making a mistake, not referring to the latest regulations, etc. So the system takes care of that for them. And secondly, it takes care of all the routine aspects it takes care, so that the staff, they can focus their training, their experience on the more important aspect, which is safety. Thanks to these reasons and more, DG Autocheck is trusted by customers around the world, including airlines, ground handlers, freight forwarders. And you will see that they are in different areas, they're in different shapes, sizes, in different locations. But one thing that is common among all of them is that there is a drive, there is a passion to use the latest technology solutions to improve, to keep constantly improving their processes and to deliver an excellent customer experience. So that is what drives them. And we have seen that in the system. So we have more than 20 customers now, with several big customers that we are doing the trials with in final negotiations, etc., who are expected to join us very soon. So today we have more than 100,000 checks, DG checks, which have been done using the system. On an average, we have around 10,000 checks which are going through the system. Now, I know that there are freight forwarders here as well in the audience, and you may be wondering, okay, this is all great. It's the acceptance check is done by the airlines, the ground handlers. What is in it for me? And the good news is there is. So first of all, of course, as a freight forwarder, you do benefit when your airline or your ground handler uses DG Autocheck. You can be assured that you have the safest. It would be in compliance, and of course they will be able to process your shipments much faster than in a manual process. So that is good. But also you have an opportunity as freight forwarders. You are able as well to use DG Autocheck yourselves. And where it brings added value for you is when you do pre-acceptance checks, you will be able to do that digitally in an automated format, so that you will be able to identify and rectify issues before you actually send the physical shipment to the airline or GHA. And it will help to ensure your shipments are flown as booked, give you the customer satisfaction, which, as you know, is priceless. And one of the things, actually, again, another anecdote to share with you from one of our customers, they mentioned to us is that other than, of course, that it makes it easier, it makes it faster, but also they find it that worse than them telling to the customer that the shipment is rejected. The reasons, it comes from IATA. So there is a solid basis as well, and they understand and they recognize it as well. Now, I told you business intelligence is the icing on the cake. Now, DG Autocheck, there are two key aspects. So first is the automation. So it helps you to make the process more efficient, more safer, more faster. The second aspect, which using DG Autocheck, is data. So you get visibility over what is happening across your network. You will get to know, by sitting where you are, a click of a button, you can see what exactly is going on at the various stations across the world. And the second part of it is, with the data, is as well you get the BI reports. The DG Autocheck brings you a wealth of BI capabilities. There are inbuilt dashboard reports in DG Autocheck, as well as you can download data and create your own custom reports as well. So that's in a nutshell about DG Autocheck. So next I will show you, as promised, a sneak preview of the solution, so you can see firsthand yourself what we have been talking about so far. So this is the homepage of DG Autocheck. When you log in, this is what you see. So here is where you have all the dangerous goods declarations. So you see the ones which the status which they have passed or failed. You see, as well as the ones which are yet to be processed. So first step, after you upload the dangerous goods declaration to start the acceptance check, you click on the airway bill number, you're taken to a main screen. There you will see the declaration form which you have uploaded. So this is basically a scanned image here. So the system converts that into data, and that data is then used for performing the automated acceptance check. So you will confirm the data, and then you are ready to start the acceptance check. So there's some high level information shown, and then when you click and save and start check, that's when the magic happens. So what has happened here is, within a few milliseconds here, what has happened is system has taken the data which is on that DGD, on the declaration form. It's automatically checked against all the rules in the DGR, and it's presenting the results to the Cat 6 user. Essentially what it is this paper checklist today which you have, but which is completed in a digital form and completed in an automated manner. So you will see here a few things. You will note as you see when you see the green icon, it means that the system has cleared it. There are no issues found. Whenever a system finds an issue, it will flag it. There will be a red icon. So you can quickly go through them. There may be some aspects which you need to manually check. So for example, related to the airway bill, you can attach that airway bill as well as a resource here. So you can quickly refer to that, answer the questions which are needed. As well, you will see there are the variations which Dave mentioned to you as well. These variations, whenever it apply to a shipment, it will be automatically shown to you. You don't need to go through the DGR to try to find which are the ones applicable anymore. System will automatically check that and show that to you. So you'll be able to quickly do that. And then as well, you will see system will flag, will check, of course, system will check all the aspects. It will automatically check, whether it's starting from simple things like UN number, class or division, packing group. It checks all of that and it against the blue pages, and it gives an alert whenever a compliance issue is found. So here you will see that, for example, an example you can see on your screen here. So for example, system here has checked the blue pages. It's found that for this UN number, for this packing group, for this packing instruction, for this aircraft type, the maximum allowed is 5 liters, whereas shipper has entered 6 liters. Another compliance issue system has found here, for example, it says that the substance provided is actually a listed substance. And if you go to the DGR, you will see that it's actually forbidden. So probably what shipper was trying to do was trying to hide it under the technical name, hoping that the acceptance staff will miss it. But with DG Autocheck, there is simply no escape. So system will spot that and alert to the Cat 6 user. And going on, system even checks, for those of you familiar with that, you will know that there is a compatibility check. When you have multiple items packed together, you need to verify that all of them are compatible with each other. Here, system within matter of a few seconds, system does that automatically. And most interestingly, for people who are familiar with that, is the Q value calculation. There is a calculation which is needed to ensure that they can be put together. And it is not rocket science, but it takes time. Here, system has done that calculation within a few seconds, and it presents the results to the user. And here as well, you will see system has done all of this. System has checked, right from the simple things like UN number, the proper shipping name, to checking if the quantity is within limits, to checking the packing instructions, to checking compatibility, to checking to doing the Q value calculations. Everything is taken care by the system. So gone are the days when you have to refer back to the paper manual DGR anymore. Everything, this is the technology is available in this day and age. And this is the way that acceptance checks will be done in the future. So that you have done the document check. Once you've done that, then you have the physical check. Of course, here you will verify. System will tell you what to look for. So it will show you what are the marks and the labels which are required for those shipments. So you don't need to refer back. So again, for those who are familiar, you know that you need to refer to the DGR to find out what are the labels, what are the marks. So Dave was explaining to you about the changes to the marks for the lithium battery shipments, for example. So all of these now is automated by the system. So whenever there is any change, it's automatically reflected. The system will tell you what exactly you need to see on that package. It will tell you all what is needed. If you find any compliance issue, then that you will flag. For example, that you will fail. So for example, if you find there is a shipment which is missing, this orientation label is required, you can take a picture of that. You can fail the question. You can take a picture of that, attach it to the check so that when you send it back to the shipper with the acceptance check report, you can do it with a click of a button. As well, if you found that there was, for example, a damage or a leak to the package as well, any discrepancy, any exception that you find, you'll be able to capture that and then notify the shipper accordingly. So once you've done that, you confirm the acceptance, you sign off on the acceptance check, and then you click of a button, you generate the acceptance check report. So the details are there in the report. It tells you which are the questions failed together with the DGR reference, and then you have the complete acceptance check report. So all of this is at a click of a button, and of course you can directly send it by email to your customers as well, and voila, you have completed the acceptance check. Now the second aspect I'll show you as well is the other part of it, which I told you is data. So I told you there is a wealth of data available in the system. As the BI report. So these are the dashboard reports. So it tells you, for example, how many checks were done each month, how many were passed or failed, the shipment type, the average time that takes to do a check organization wide for you. As well, it gives you a breakdown by offices. So for example, if you have multiple locations, it tells you by location what is the time taken, for example, how many shipments were passed, failed. You have the information at user level. You can download the data to create your own custom reports. And most interestingly, a new feature we have in the system now is for the acceptance checks failure. So it will tell you, for example, how many checks were passed, were failed due to the document check, how many was failed due to the packaging check. You have all those information. You will also have what are your top failures in terms of document checks, what are your top failures in terms of the packaging check as well. And most interestingly, this is just a preview of that. You will have the complete set of data which you can export. And why this is important is, for example, from the data you can see a particular shipper is having a same issue on a particular route consistently. You see that issue, you will be able to see that from the data. This will help you to go back to them to help to rectify the issue, so that they don't have these issues and they can have their shipment flown as booked. And you have the customer satisfaction, which, as you know, is priceless. And every action, of course, in DG Autocheck is recorded. You have much more features and functionalities in the system. But I hope this gives you a flavor of the tool, what it can do. And coming back here, so as I mentioned, for the physical check, you will use the tablets, which you can load in the DG Autocheck in the same way as you do for the document check. And you will be able to do this with the shipment in front of you. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And I hand it over back to you, David.
Right, thank you, Ben, for the insightful sharing. Personally, being a folder myself in the past, I certainly think that DG Autocheck is a very great tool. I share one experience I had in the past whereby I actually had a shipment that was stuck, at the cargo terminal when I was trying to lodge in the cargo, and it was a case where the DG actually was declared wrongly, and that caused actually the cargo to be stuck for almost a month, with various interviews by the civil aviation on what went wrong and how do we prevent it from happening, trying to prove to them our mitigation plan and prevention action. So it's definitely very painful, and I thought software or digital solution like this would definitely help us to prevent some of this situation from happening. So I urge the community to take a serious thought about installing this digital solution into your system, right? Right. So we're moving on to the Q&A session. Just a note to everyone, we have about actually a bit more time. So give or take, we have 10 minutes for Q&A. So you're free to type in your questions now or raise them verbally. So for those who wish to raise the question verbally, please use the raise hand button. And if you like to speak, we'll then turn on the microphone as well as your video feature so that we can see you as well. So we welcome questions on the floor now. Seems a bit quiet. I don't see any questions as of now. Right, we have one coming up. So the question is directed to Ben. So may I ask which airline have already used the DG Autocheck? Ben, if you can help us answer this question.
Sorry, I was here. Thank you, David. Thank you for the question as well. So we have airlines around the world who are using DG Autocheck. I will quickly show you, bring you back to the slide where I have the list of customers here. So you will see we have airlines like IAG Cargo, Malaysia Airlines, Japan Airlines, United Airlines, LATAM Airlines, Egypt Air, Lord Polish, and many more who are expected to join us as well in the very near future.
Right. Thank you, Ben. Another question for Dihydroxide. People asking, is there any fee imposed? Is it free?
So indeed, there is, it's been, you can imagine the complexity of developing, such a solution. Thanks to Dave here as well. He's one of the founding architects of this solution. And there is of course a nominal fee for using that, and it depends on your volumes. And if you can feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to tell you the pricing as well.
Right. So maybe we can expand a bit more on that question, Ben. I suppose if a company wishes to sign up with us and they have more users or more network station, they are able to enjoy the economy of scale to enjoy a lower fee per station. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And one of the benefits in DG Autocheck is that there is no limit to the number of users. There is no limit to the number of stations. So it helps you as you can seamlessly expand across. You can start from a couple of stations in your home base, and you can easily expand across the network. And like you said, David, indeed, as they expand, as the volumes grow, you will see that the pricing it's a differential as well.
Right. So it's actually quite preferred that if any one of you wishes to sign up, then try to get a network of your stations to actually sign up together. Then you enjoy a better economy of scale, and I think it does make sense for the networks to be all on the same level in terms of competency, because it doesn't make sense if one station in the origin sign up for DG Autocheck and then at destination, people are doing it in the different manner. I think supply chain is always a network solution that we provide to our customers, and everything is just connected in many ways, right? So next question, is DG Autocheck mandatory or just a helping tool or supporting tool?
We wish it was mandatory when you look at the safety, when you consider safety, but no, it is not mandatory. It is a solution which is available for use. It's for those who wish to improve their processes, who wish to improve their safety, who wish to improve their customer experience. It is a tool which is available for them. It is not mandatory at all.
Right. So we do have a couple of people who just raised hand. Can we just go to Mr. Neo Tiam Heng? Dinah, if you can help to unmute his feature.
Hey, hi Ben. This is Neo. I just want to check. Apart from the airlines which are ready for the DG auto checks, are the terminals because the receiving the checks are all done by the terminals? Are they ready for it? The ground handling agents, I mean. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for the question. So absolutely. So the beauty of DG Autocheck is that it is very simple. You don't require any detailed software. It's a web application. So as long as you have an internet connection, you can access it from anywhere. So there are customers who are using that. So and like I said, the training is a very brief training, which is a few hours, and you can get started. So all you need is a web browser. Get trained for a couple of hours, and they're ready to start using that. So there is no special other requirements which are there. Does that help to clarify? Yeah.
So meaning to say that, example, Singapore or Southeast Asia, the ground handling, I mean, not only the airlines are in it, but the ground handling agents are already with this system.
Right. So they can use. So today they use the paper process. They use the manual checklist, and they complete it. Instead of that, they will use the digital solution. Instead of that, they will do it digitally instead of doing it in the paper. And the airlines are using that, so they know this is coming from IATA. So they will accept these when you have the checklist from the DG Autocheck.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Shall we go next to Balaji, who has also raised his hand? Balaji, you may ask your question.
Much for the wonderful presentation. It was so detailed. My
Thank
question is that you did mention we can scan the DGD. So the scanning could be done with the normal printer and scanner, or do we have any special device to buy for that?
Okay, thank you, Balaji, for the question. Absolutely, you do not require any special scanner. Your regular document scanner that you have, that's all you need to scan that. There's no special scanner which is needed.
Oh, that's great. My follow-up question is that you said like iPad or any tabs that can be used for acceptance. Is it a mobile compatibility?
So as of now, it is not, because you need a minimum screen size to be able to perform, to be able to see, the checks, to see the preview, etc. So it's not optimized for mobiles for now, but maybe in the future.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
Right. I'm going to jump to the chat question so that we kind of toggle those who want to speak and those who have typed that question. Yeah. So the next question is from Joanna. She's actually looking forward to how we can acquire DG Autocheck, and can DG Autocheck be used during audits as well?
So first part of the question, yes, so you can just contact us at dgautocheck@iata.org, and we will tell you the process to sign up. It's quite straightforward, so we'll explain you the steps. And in terms of the audit, I'm not clear on what that means, but in DG Autocheck, just to be clear, there is an audit. Every action which happens in DG Autocheck is recorded, so there is a complete audit trail of every action that is happening in the system, so that is available at all times.
Right. So I see the next question from Mr. Namnyo. I think the question is about the same. Do we need to buy any kind of software? So this has already been answered. Next question is, will IATA accredited trainers around the world be allowed to provide DG Autocheck training?
So, okay, thank you for that question. So right now, it is provided by the training is, like I said, it's quite straightforward. It just requires a couple of hours of online training, and you're good to go. Regarding IATA accredited, I see we have Christoph here as well, who has joined us, who's a senior product manager. Thank you, Christoph, for joining. That is not planned right now, but it's something that could be considered in the future.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Thank you, David. I actually replied already by text to this gentleman. That's an option. It needs to be discussed with our training team, but that's something we are looking into.
Right. So I'm seeing a long list of questions, so I'm going to jump back to those questions people who want to ask questions. So can we unmute Mr. Win Rizali? Sorry if I pronounce your name wrongly. Dinah, are you able to unmute Mr. Win Rizali?
Win, maybe you want to unmute your mic.
Right. If not, let's jump to the next question we have. Just give me a minute. Next question we have from the audience is, does Autocheck, DG Autocheck have an e-no doc option?
Okay, thank you for the question. So indeed, one of the features of DG Autocheck is that even when you start with the paper declaration form, you do your acceptance check. At the end of your acceptance check, you have an option to export the data, and that data you can use to prepare your no-talk. Now this is being actually used by one of our customers, and they have been public about it, so I can share their name. It's Donata in Brussels. Actually, they use the data from DG Autocheck to prepare or to in their no-talk in an automated way. So it saves them a lot of time instead of having to manually key in the data. The data is available in DG Autocheck, so they export it to their no-talk system, and then it's easy for them, very easy then for them to create the no-talk. So it facilitates. It has the data which is needed for the no-talk, which can be fed into your system. And
right.
This is being used today, like I said, by many customers.
Right. Thanks for that. So next question. How about DG Autocheck checklist on digital? How does it look like when we have printed through this DG Autocheck? So I think they're asking for how does the physical paper printout looks like for the acceptance checklist? Will it be the same as the normal physical document?
Sure. I think Christoph, you wanted to say? Christoph, you are muted in case you're speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. It's lagging when I mute. So as I said in the chat, the product is oriented toward digitalization. So we don't recommend printing the checklist, because the checklist on DigitalCheck is much more detailed than the two-pager. Today, the two-pager is generic. It can work for all kinds of shipments. It can work for overpack. It can work for all pack in one. But the one of DG Autocheck is much more tailored to your actual consignment and documentation. So as Ben put on the screen, you can see that you've got all the details. You've got the questions and the sub-questions for all the UN numbers. You have got the details on what failed. It's provided to help the shipper to correct the information. We are working on a condensed version of the checklist to facilitate the transition. But today we recommend to send it electronically. If you print it, as you can see, there is a lot of detail.
Right. So next question, it's from Sharon. I probably see Sharon raising up the hand just now to speak. Apologize for not getting you back on time, but anyway, you have typed the question. So for DG Autocheck, on the checking on the packages, how do we know that the precedence of hazard label is followed?
Maybe Dave, you can take this one, because it's slightly difficult for us to elaborate about the procedure.
Okay, I mean, the image that is shown for the package, okay, so we see it there. So we've got 3 hazard labels shown. That simply identifies that the package must bear, or in that case, 4 hazard labels. There is no precedence. There's no order that the hazard labels have to be placed in on the package. It's simply that all the hazard labels must be applied to the package. I hope that answers the question.
Right, thank you for that. Next question, I think is quite similar. Probably Ben, you can highlight this. Is IATA providing training for DG Autocheck once acquired by the station?
Right, thank you, David. Thank you for the question. Indeed, okay, I think Christoph wants to add a comment.
Yeah, because Dave had no chance to see that I already replied to most of the questions and it was acknowledged. So thanks. Anyway, it benefits to everybody who can maybe not read the chat. Yes, of course. When you subscribe, you don't acquire, to be clear, you don't acquire the product. There is nothing to install. So it's a subscription. So you subscribe, you have your own home in DG Autocheck, and all your users. By the way, you can have as many users as you want. You can have as many stations as you want. That's something you have to understand. You just pay for what you use. You pay for the checks. So it's like a mobile prepaid. You purchase it at the beginning of the year and then you use your checks. This being said, to answer the question, yes, of course, when you subscribe to the enterprise subscription, then you get 2 sessions provided by our experts. Now we do it online, of course, for the reason you know. The tool being quite easy to understand, usually you require between 3 and 4 hours for a group. So we provide 2 sessions, which are train the trainers sessions, where we explain to super users how they can in turn train the Cat 6 users. So that's the way it is done. You can always purchase additional training sessions, and we can give you a package. But usually, for even large subscription, 2 sessions are provided. As well, we provide quick support when you've got a specific question, but there is an online help as well, which is integrated and very detailed. And by experience now, the product has been live for 3 years, more than 3 years. We receive 1 per month a question, because the product is so intuitive, so easy to grasp, but so powerful thanks to the DGR behind it. People usually don't have any question. So sometimes when there is a new feature which is really major, we can get some questions, but normally it's covered by the online app and by the training. Thank you.
Thank you, Gustav.
I think we are going to stop here for the Q&A session, given that it's time to move on to the next presentation. But I just want to thank the audience for being so supportive and enthusiastic on the questions. It's good to see so many questions coming to us. So while we move on to the next presentation, if you have still some questions, I'll just request Christoph and Ben and also Dave probably to stay for another 15 minutes or so that if you do see some questions that has been typed up on the chat, just help us reply to them. Or alternatively, the audience, if you feel that you still have further questions, you can feel free to email me and I'll reach out to the subject matter expert to get around to your question. Right. So thank you, Ben. Thank you, Christoph, and thank you, Dave. Right, coming up next, we are going to have Candy Chan, our manager, Dangerous Goods Standards, to provide you an overview of the regulatory framework, outline of how the CBTA concepts, and explain the various components and steps to running a CBTA program. So over to you, Candy. Feel free to take over the screen.
Right, so I hope you can all see my screen and can hear me. So good afternoon to all of you in Asia Pacific, and also good morning or good evening to any one of you who are participating from any other parts of the world. It's great to see you here, but it's not that great that I can't see you in person. I've never done any Asia Pacific roadshow before, so it is actually my first. So CBTA, David Brennan, he already mentioned that we made some changes to the Appendix H of the IATA Dangerous Goods regulations. But even though we made some major changes and restructured the document itself, CBTA is nothing new. Nothing new in the sense that we have already been talking about it for years. And most importantly, actually some companies, even before we start implementing CBTA, they actually have already have their CBTA training plans or syllabus in the organization. So going back to the regulations themselves, CBTA, it has already been in the ICAO technical instructions since the beginning of 2021. So it's in the current edition of the technical instructions. And like I said, we already had some information, some guidance on CBTA in the IATA Dangerous Goods regulations for some years. But this year, we always talk about having some major changes. To me, I would say it's a major upgrade. So the message is clearer. The content is it's richer. And we also include some flowcharts, some diagrams, some illustrations to help people to understand better, to grasp the idea even better. So now let's take a look at the actual major changes that we have made. And this is how it looks like. So as you can see, we added some more flowcharts here, so as to give people a better idea on what exactly they should be following, what kind of input and output that they can be expecting. We also add in some definitions. So these definitions are all related to, for training, dangerous goods training, so it's related to CBTA implementation. But these definitions, they are not in Appendix H. They can be found in Appendix A, together with other groceries, taxes, definitions in the dangerous goods regulations. As for the significant changes that I have been talking about, having some major changes, so here they are. The significant changes, the first one, we clarified the differences between a training program and training course. We find that the definitions are very much later for these two terms. The reason is we observed that many people actually got confused with it. They actually thought that the two terms can be interchangeable, referring to the same thing. But the fact is, training program is more on the end-to-end process. So it starts from where you do your training needs analysis. You go through the process of developing and including the plans itself, as well as the actual training materials themselves. And lastly, you also do the evaluation, which is to understand the effectiveness of the training program, identify any gaps to be addressed. On the other hand, training course, it is just one single event. So in CBTA, the idea is to have multiple training events that you can follow, and training course, it should be just one of them. So traditionally, in the old days, when we are still following the DG category training framework, then it would be more like a classroom training or online e-learning training. So that is the kind of training course that you can be expecting. So these are the two differences of these two terms. The next one, we also explained the role of designers and assessors. They are not new. So designers and assessors, they are already in CBTA all this time. Just that in our previous guidance document, we didn't put too much of focus on these two roles, but these two roles are in fact very critical for the implementation of CBTA. Designers, they are the ones that design the training and assessment plans. So without these training and assessment plans, you basically would get lost on what you should be doing, what kind of assessment tools that you should be having, or the kind of training syllabus that you should consider. So they actually set the blueprint of the entire implementation of CBTA. And then the assessor, because like I said, the training program, the last step to do is to evaluate the effectiveness of the training program. So that is the job of these assessors. They collect the feedbacks from all parties involved in this training process. It can be the employees, the trainees, the instructors, other training and assessment personnel. They get the comments, they get the feedback, and they also need to do some investigation work because they have to understand how effectively that the staff performed after having attended the training program. So this is what they have to be responsible for the assessor. And we also spelled out how non-instructor type of training and assessment personnel can play a role. So if you remember what I said training course was for like classroom training, online training. So it's one of the training events. But in CBTA, you can have multiple training events. So now you can have some non-classroom type trainer. So these are the people that you can sort of take advantage from, because these are the ones that who are experienced. They are already doing similar job function, and they have the hands-on experience of providing guidance that the new employees could benefit from. So these would be can be the supervisor, the peers who have the experience, and then provide training, observations, performance evaluation, and then assess the performance of the newly trained staff. We also redefined the competency factors and the 4 levels of proficiency. Competency factors, in the past, in the previous edition, we have got 4 of them, but now we have got 3 of them. It's not a downgrade of our standard, which I will elaborate further in my next slide. And then the levels of proficiency, it's still 4. It was 4, and it is still now 4. The 4 is still the introductory, basic, intermediate, and advanced. Nothing has been changed except for the definitions. We made them clearer for people to understand easier. We also refined the task lists for certain defined functions. So in H6, Appendix H6, you will find several different task lists for different well-defined functions. These task lists are mainly for references. It's not something that you have to follow completely, because you can adjust them based on your actual operations. So they are only for references, but we did remove some of the tasks that we know they don't really, they are not quite relevant to the particular job functions. So competency-based training and assessment, of course, the most important thing, the essence of it, is to enable the personnel to become competent to perform the assigned functions that they have got. One of the key things here is to develop the competency factors of personnel. So here are the competency factors: knowledge, skills, attitudes. Knowledge is what someone needs to know, someone that can learn from throughout the learning process. They need to have the information so as to understand what they need to do. So taking an example, shippers, they need to prepare their own shipper's declaration. Then what kind of information needs to go into that shipper's declaration? That would be the kind of knowledge the person needs to be trained for. Then now you have the knowledge. You need to know how to make use of what you learned. So you have to have the ability to perform an action. So that's your skills, which is the other competency factors that the personnel needs to have. The last one is attitude. Attitude, to me, I always say that is very vague, is intangible, because we only refer them to internal mental state of the person. Some people think that the level of attitude that one needs to have should be tied into the complexity of the job, of the task. But to me, I would say that has really nothing to do with the complexity of the task, because no matter what one is doing, they should always be doing it wholeheartedly, with the heart, and with the right attitude to do their job. So all these three, they are the competency factors. So in my previous slide, I mentioned that we used to have 4, but now we are down to 3. 3 is actually what the ICAO guidance document has as well. So we are very much in line in that sense. But what was the 4th? The 4th one, it was experience. I'm not saying that experience is not important and important when we drop that from the 4 competency factors. We do consider that experience is important. The reason why we removed it from the core competency factors is that we think it is more reasonable to keep it down to 3, because imagine that you are trying to group your personnel and to develop this CBTA program. It is going to be very challenging for grouping different types of people by the level of experience that they have got. Of course, it is good that you can do it, but some people would consider that if we put it as one of the core competency factors, then it must be something that they need to follow, which is not quite true. So we still have this element of experience, but not part of the core competency factors. Instead, it should always be something that you should take into consideration, especially when you are doing recurrent training program that you are trying to design for someone who already have experience, because the level of knowledge and the level of skills that these people should have should always be different from any of the new green staff. So, like I said, we used to have 4, we are down to 3, but we still have the 4th element. Next one is the components of the development process. So as you can imagine, CBTA can be very flexible. Can be very flexible in the sense that the company, they can customize things based on their own operation process, operational needs, then they can tweak the program tweak whatever that elements that they would like to include in their training program. But in terms of components, we would suggest the companies to, no matter how much you are altering your training program to fit your needs, you still make sure that you have the following components that I'm going to talk about here. The reason is for you to make sure that you are on track. You have got everything else in place, making sure that nothing has been missed. The first one is the training specification. The importance of the training specification is that it includes all the requirements that you have, all the needs that you should be addressed through this training program. The second one is the assessment plan and training plan. So this is the part that the designer comes in. They are the ones who understand the procedure, the workflow, the type of functions that the company has, and define the right tools, the right assessment tools, the best option of the training syllabus or modules that they should have. So these are the ones to be included in this assessment and training plan. Next one is, of course, now you have got the plan, then you develop the contents of it. So you have the training and assessment materials. That would be the contents to be used in the training program, in all these different training events, as well as the assessments. Then, of course, you have to deliver the training. The employees, they will have to attend the training. The last one is the program report, and that is the thing that the assessor does. So the assessor will collect the feedback, and then they also need to do investigation. They have to find out if there's any gap between what the personnel is expected to achieve after the training and how they are actually achieving them. So you identify the gaps, you produce this report, and if necessary, you may need to go back and complete this process again. You revise your training program and adjust. So now let's have a look at the details of how it can be implemented or developed. So you have phase one. Phase one, of course, you have a training request, because without a request, you actually don't need to do any training at all. Then you, as the employer, they have to identify the type of job functions, the operations involved. And from the job functions that you identify, then you would find out what kind of tasks that the employees would have to do in that function. And of course, you also need to collect all the other information, because then you know what needs to be trained or what needs to be included in the training program. It can be, of course, the international regulations, such as the IATA dangerous goods regulations. The local legislation, so any local requirements from the government, from the Civil Aviation Authority, then you have to make sure that your staff is well trained for them. Of course, you also need to take into consideration of your own company manuals, because for some companies, they have got their own standard operating procedures, such as like for operators, it can be something that they don't accept, even though it's allowed in the dangerous goods regulations. So these are the things that you have to collect as the start of implementing CBTA. Then from there, you can identify the requirements, the competency factors, so you know what tasks the employee will need to carry out. Then you understand what the requirements will be, what they should be trained, what level of competency and level of proficiency that they should achieve at the end of this training program. Then now you have got the training specification, which is the first component that I mentioned in the previous slide. Next, then you are ready for phase two. You start to define the interim or the final competency standards. So like I said, you know what the staff needs to be trained. Then you should also have an expectation of what the staff can perform at the end. And also the designer here, the training designer that I mentioned previously, then they develop the assessment tools and training syllabus, the modules, the structure, training schedule, everything else is developed here. And which is why I said it's the blueprint of the entire training program that you are going through here. Then now you have got the assessment plan and training plan. And do note that you may think that it's strange that we mention assessment plan before training plan, because usually you do the training and then you have the assessment, right? But in here, the idea is different, because if you remember, I said You know what the functions are going to be, what the tasks the employee will have to carry out. Then you know or anticipate what they will achieve or what they can perform at the end. So basically, you are working backward. You know what the performance standards are going to be for the staff after they are trained. Then now you go back and you step backward, and then you see, okay, how I'm going to get the staff to that stage. So now we get into the phase 3. The phase 3 is very straightforward. You just design the actual content based on the assessment and training plan that you already developed in phase 2. So the content of the training materials, it can be workbook, it can be job aids, any kind of things that can help the employee to obtain the knowledge and understand. And you also have the examinations and assessments developed, because you may want to have the examination papers at the end of the training itself to test the skills level, the knowledge level of the staff. Of course, other than exams, you can also have other types of assessment. Then you have the training and assessment materials. Now you go into phase 4, which is to deliver the training or receive the training if they were the employees. So in here, you have got the assessment and training materials. And of course, you also need to look for the facilities and equipment. Most importantly, you have to source for the right personnel, which is the qualified trainer to deliver the course. Plus, I said a course is only one of the training events. So you can have other training events such as on-job training, on-job assessment, observations, other type of things. So you should also be sourcing your qualified personnel to deliver these long course-based training events. Phase 5, which is the last phase of the event, of the entire training program, you have the qualified assessor to evaluate. So the job is to collect the feedback. And like I said, it's not just about the feedback. These persons should also be investigating, checking how the shippers are doing, checking how in the case of operators, how the acceptance staff that they are doing. So an example would be for shippers, such as, were there any shipments rejected that were prepared by this employee who was trained? If yes, then were they rejected correctly? And if they were rejected correctly, then what actually went wrong? Did the shipper actually produce incorrect information for the shipments that he or she prepared? So these would be the things that you go back to investigate and try to identify if there's any performance issues, or maybe an issue with the training program that you had that you have to adjust to make sure that the staff is up to the standard, or maybe be able or competent to perform the tasks that they are assigned to do. So these are the key players and their roles. So I already mentioned you have got the employer. The employer, they analyze the training needs. They identify what functions are out there, what tasks are involved in the different functions, consolidate all the information that the training program needs to have. So some people actually ask these employer, do they actually have to be the boss of the company? No. Do they need to be IATA Dangerous Goods trained? Probably not. Maybe only some information of some knowledge on IATA Dangerous Goods in terms of the training requirements, then of course they need to understand, but I'm not saying that the employer has to understand everything like acceptance or classifications and so forth. So no. This employer, does he have to be from the training departments? No. He or she does not need to be coming from the training department. As long as they understand the actual workflow of the organization, that's perfect. And then you have got the designer. The designer already set the design, the assessment and training plan. Usually these persons will be coming from the training department, but it is not mandatory to be. Trainer, you have got the instructor type and non-instructor type. They deliver the training and assessment, the actual assessment and the training itself, so they can do that. It can be the instructor, it can be any other PS for the other types of training. The employee, they participate, not in the sense, not just for participating in the training course, but also to provide feedback. the feedback is going to be useful for the assessor, because the assessor, they are the ones who collect all the feedback from the employees, from the trainers, from the designers. They can actually tell if the training program is suitable for what the functions are trained for. So now let's have a look at how we can possibly be doing it, implementing CBTA. So I've got an example here. It's just a snapshot. It's not, I would say you can follow it as the base for developing your program, but I'm not saying that it's a complete picture of what you should be doing. So a lithium battery manufacturer, they have got an office in China and an office in the United States, but they only have one global training program that is applicable to all of their offices. So the first phase, you do the analysis, you identify the functions, so you prepare your task list. You can make reference to the sample in Appendix H 6.1, and then you collect all the different documents, because I said one of the offices is in China, so the staff should understand well for the CCAR regulations in China. The ones in the USA, they need to understand 49 CFR. And of course, you have got the internal ops manual that you have to make sure that your internal procedures or requirements are included. Then you identify the requirements. The requirement here is to be able to ship standalone lithium batteries. And then now you set the competency factors, which is the knowledge, skills, attitudes of your staff. And that's your training specification. You go into phase 2 with your training specification. Your training specification should cover all different tasks with the depth of understanding. You determine the interim and final competency standard, which is to be able to classify, pack, mark, label the shipment, and of course to be prepared to the documentation accurately. And you also, the designer here, they would be developing the training plan, the assessment plan. So he would be the ones who is finding the activities that would be most suitable for this training program. So in here, I've given some examples of online, interactive, packing preparation. So it's real life experience, kind of, but in a simulation environment. And then you have got the paper-based exam, on-job monitoring, and then now you have the syllabus, the training schedule, and so forth. And going into phase 3, so that is how your assessment and training plan looks like. So for my example here, I have given a 3.5 day plus training program. So you have got the first day giving lecturer, because the staff is new and needs to understand, get some knowledge, get a feel of what it is about. The second day in the morning, it can continue with the lecture if it was insufficient in the first day. In the afternoon, can do some observation, can take your staff to observe how other employees or colleagues are doing at the moment. The third day in the morning, can do some practice exercise. You give them some real life, maybe historical shipments for them to prepare and try to do some of the hands-on work by themselves. And then in the afternoon, if necessary, we have got a Q&A session. The next day, we have the assessment. The assessment, of course, the first thing is the exam papers. That's definitely the material that you will need. Now afterwards, in here, I'm suggesting to have a job shadowing for 3 days. And with, of course, if one is on shadowing, then also needs to be putting actions in place and also do some job assessment. So here, in terms of the materials to be developed, then I've got the training book. The training book includes the basic information with focus on the lithium battery packing instructions, how to mark, how to pack, how to declare, make the documentation. Then the assessment tools, I have got the interactive practice exercise to be developed. And also, I will have the assessment tools. So assessment tools, I've got the exam paper with the multiple choice, and I've got the practical exercises on marking and labeling as well. And for documentation checklists, I will also be developing checklists, because I said I'll have the on-job assessment and on-job shadowing. So I will have to have some kind of checklist to make sure that, okay, tick, they can do this job, they can't do that one, and these needs improvement, something like that. So now I have got the training and assessment materials, then I need to source for a classroom because I also have practical exercise online, so I need to have the online practice platform. And of course, I also need to have the qualified trainer to help deliver the course. But like I said, I have the on-job assessments and on-job shadowing, so I need to have some experienced staff, peers, who are already in these similar functions that have the experience and can guide the staff through and evaluate their performance. And lastly, I've got the assessor for doing the evaluation. So like I said, can collect feedback and then develop some investigation work, going back and forth and then check how the personnel is doing in terms of the shipments that they are preparing, any rejections and things like that. So that's pretty much it in terms of the example. And all that I would like to emphasize is that CBTA is coming. People generally want to wait until the last minute of the end of the transition period. We are already 1 year before the end of the transition period. So it's really time to get yourself prepared and get started. And one last important message is that what we have in Appendix H is the guidance document. And the same case for the ICAO guidance document, they are guidance documents. So there's no legal binding on it. What most important is you should be checking with your local civil aviation authorities to see whether they have any specific requirements for you to follow. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Candy, for the insightful sharing. So coming up next, we will have Yanif Sorani, our Senior Manager Certification, to share with you how IATA CBTA centers can support you to develop a dangerous goods training program that meet the requirements of CBTA approach in accordance with DGR Appendix H, the DGR training guidelines. So Yanif, over to you. Feel free to take over the control.
Thank you, David. Let me display my slides. Just give me a sign that you can see it and we go. Excellent. I guess you can see it, right?
We can see you, yeah.
Perfect. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you more information on the CBTA Center. Good morning for the participant in Asia. Good afternoon, actually, and good morning for those that are attending from other regions. My name is Yanif Sorani, and I'm responsible for certification with IATA. And among them, we also have a certification in the area of dangerous goods trainings that we are going to share with you more information today. Earlier today, I think Dave gave you a hint about the upcoming changes in the training provisions. And just now, Candy elaborate a little bit in much more details and technical details on what this will involve in practical requirements from the employers in developing their training programs in order to produce a competent workforce. So here the focus is more to share with you on how we are planning to support the industry to develop capacity and resources in order for them to be able to meet the CBTA guidelines moving forward. So again, just to start with the background for those of you that are attending just my session and didn't get the chance to attend the background information that provided earlier, the CBTA was decided by the DGB 27 back in September 2029, and as a result, the ICAO technical instructions, the whole Chapter 4 of Part 1 regarding dangerous goods trainings has been changed. As a consequence, we updated the relevant section 1.5 in the dangerous goods regulation to also include a mandatory approach for dangerous goods trainings according to the CBTA by January 1st, 2023. Very important to say that the existing training provisions may continue to be used until the end of 2022 according to attachment 4 of the dangerous goods technical instructions, or even according to table 15A that we publish in the 61st editions of the dangerous goods. The basic requirement for staff on whether these are staff from shippers, freight forwarders, or any other personnel that involve in processing, shipping, or handling or transporting dangerous goods remain unchanged. Those people will require to complete trainings relevant to their functions as it is today. So what does it mean in terms of timeline? We are currently in the interim period, and the interim period intends to allow stakeholders on whether these are civil aviation authorities or airlines, handling agents, and training providers to progressively migrate their respective involvement in the dangerous goods trainings in order to meet the CBTA requirements. CBTA, it is not something that is new in our industry. This is something that is happening for pilot training, for maintenance training for almost 20 years. It is just new for dangerous goods. But the experience showed that it requires some time to move from what we call traditional trainings or the existing training structure into competency-based training and assessment. And a transition period of 2 years gives the sufficient time for organization in order to do so. So we encourage any of you that have not yet started working on transitioning their training program into CBTA approach to do so and maximize this transition period to make this change. When it's come to the responsibility, it's very important to say that the employers remain the ultimate responsible for the establishment of the dangerous goods training program. However, we foresee that many employers, like it is today, will rely on the third-party providers to provide them with different aspects of the CBTA requirements. And that means that mainly these third-party providers will be responsible not anymore just in providing the training it is today, they will get involved also in supporting those organizations in the different phases of the developments and the management of the training program. So we foresee that, yes, the employers will remain ultimately responsible for the overall training program for its personnel. However, the training providers will play a very important role and will continue to play a very important role, not only in providing training courses, but in supporting those organizations in developing the right materials and right tools in order for them to meet the requirements according to the CBTA. So what we foresee that Candy elaborate a little bit more on the different phases of the ADI concept, which are the analyze, design, developments, implementation, and evaluates. And we put a standards or a guidance in place in Appendix H on how to do so, with the intention to support organizations that will develop training programs that will lead to competency workforce. So it's put the responsibility on the employers, but it's still important to maintain a network of training organizations because they are going to play, in addition to the employers, a very important role in supporting the industry in meeting these requirements. When we look into it from a learner standpoint, we look on what are the requirements today for traditional trainings compared to competency-based trainings. So as you know, today the training is very much centers around the teacher. It is based on a specific job title. It's centered about specific subject contents. Today, Table 15A provides us with a table of contents in a brief level on what each category or each segments need to be trained. It's included a very wide of knowledge that everyone has to follow, regardless to his specific function. So many trainees find themselves following in trainings and getting sometimes too much knowledge and sometimes skills on something that they're not going to use in the day-to-day. It is time-based. You have to follow a specific training in a specific time frame, and this is why is centered around the teacher. Competency-based training and assessment will put the learner in the center. The focus will be on producing a competence workforce. This is why the training is based on a specific job functions and a specific task to achieve. It is aiming to reach specific performance and specific competency, and as a result, the trainings and the assessment needs to be tailored in terms of contents and assessment in order to support the employees to be able to have the right skills, the right knowledge, and retains these skills and knowledge and remain competent at all time to perform his job. Assessments are there in the competency-based training in assessment, because assessment is going to be a very important part in making sure that employees moving forwards continues to assess the competency of their workforce so that they remain competent to do their job. So this is the change from the teacher standpoints into the learner standpoints, and this is the main change that we see from moving from traditional training to competency-based training when it's come to the learner. However, it's put more responsibility and require more capacity and resources from the organization in order for them to do so. So when we look on the current requirement for traditional trainings, it very much depends on delivery of standardized courses. Today, training providers, they require to provide standardized trainings. Everyone has to follow the same trainings. Yes, there are some customization, but in general, if someone has to follow a category 6, there is a predefined syllabus that everyone has to follow. Everyone has to follow specific assessment at the end of the course with the specific allocations of questions, and at the end, be able to achieve this certification by completing this exam. So we see that we are moving from a delivery of standardized training toward a CBTA training that require from organization to identify the key competency of those organizations, the level of proficiency that they are going to achieve. Can dimension the level of competency on whether these are introductory level, intermediate level, or basic level. And then at the end, to determine the most effective way to train them on whether it will be, let's say, theoretical training in classroom environment, or practical training in classroom environment, or on-the-job trainings, or different type of delivery methods, and whether it will be instructor-led, e-learning trainings, and others means. And at the end, also to define the most reliable assessment tool to evaluate the achievements of those workforce. So much more responsibility on the employers on how they are going to identify the competency and determine the most effective way to train their staff. In doing so today, those organizations require in many cases to go through an evaluation by some civil aviation authority as part of the approval of their dangerous goods training program. Today, this review is done mainly with the intention to focus on the course contents. So today in approving dangerous goods training courses, the focus is mainly on the contents, on the personnel that are delivering these trainings. Moving forward, those organizations will require to have much more than course contents. We are moving from course contents into a training programs, and training program include much more components in which course content is just one component of it. So we are moving into evaluation of the organization training programs, their training manuals, their procedures and processes on how they are going to analyze trainings, on whether they will require to conduct a training need analysis at organization level, function level, or individual level, and same apply for the design and developments on whether they are going to design e-learning type of courses, which are going to be a very legitimate tool under CBTA approach, and many civil aviation authority are starting to accept e-learning trainings for dangerous goods trainings. Same apply for the assessment, and the most important thing is how those organizations are going to evaluate the effectiveness of the trainings. I think CBTA is very much flexible. It put the employer in the driving seat to define and to design the training to achieve his business objective and to achieve the employee's task to deliver. However, it's very important that at the same time that the employers will have a quality system in place to evaluate the effectiveness of the trainings and the performance of his employees. So moving forward, the scope of those of the review of the training course will move into review of the entire training programs and his components. We see that today dangerous good training is mainly delivered by training schools, traditional training schools that used to provide this training in classroom environment. We are moving into not necessarily training schools. We are moving from training schools to training providers. There are out there many organizations that don't consider themselves training schools because they are providing only e-learning solutions. Only e-learning solution for dangerous good trainings, and they don't consider themselves as a training school. So we are moving from a traditional provision of trainings in classroom environment into more organization that will step into this business, which is very good because we want to have more organization to provide effective training so that we can provide these trainings everywhere in the world, but it will require a different set of intention for this type of organization as part of the approval process. So we in IATA, we recognize the challenge faced by many organizations, and when I say many organizations, many civil aviation authority either are facing some challenges in moving into that direction on how they are moving forward to review and approve organization for dangerous good trainings. And in general, they are having some challenges on how to move from what we call traditional educational system into competency-based training while keeping it up with the industry regulation. As you know, we in IATA, we have a network of accredited training schools, network of about 200 schools, which is a very, very important networks in making sure that we have our ambassador out there that can provide an approved or an accredited dangerous good trainings in the industry. So we must ensure that this network continue to be in compliance with the trainings requirements so that we will continue to maintain a reliable and trust network of training organization that can provide the industry with trainings that meet and continue to meet the industry standards. And I'm giving this background information because this is what lead us into the conclusion that we need to develop a new certification program to support the industry overcome this challenge and prepare themselves to meet the requirements. And this is why we introduced a couple of months ago the CBTA Center, which is a global accreditation body on certifying organization for compliance with dangerous good provisions for dangerous good under CBTA approach. So the program intends to certify not only training schools that intend to offer trainings to the market, but also organizations like airlines and handling agents that are willing to go through a certification process with the intention to benchmark their existing training program and get the opportunity to improve it and achieve certification at the end in compliance with the required regulation. So the main objective of the program is first and foremost is to continue to maintain and monitor a global recognized accreditation program for competency-based dangerous good trainings around the world in a cost-effective manner. So this is one of our main goals currently under the ATS program, Accredited Training Schools, and it remains our main goal in making sure that we are maintaining a reliable network of training organizations that provide trainings according to the standards. And then, of course, to support the industry to develop the capacity and resources. Many of them require support in doing so. We developed the guidance documents that can be mentioned, Appendix H. It completely changed and is going to be completely a new document in 2022 edition with much more comprehensive information. Still, many organizations require to get much more support beside this guidance document. So this is where we identify the need to support the industry with other solutions and services, in addition to the different guidance documents and tools that we are having currently in place. And at the end, to raise the bar in the industry, making sure that we continue to have a network of organizations that provide high quality of trainings and effective trainings, and that we give the right visibility for those organizations that are meeting the standards. So how we are going to do it? We identified 3 types of certification. In brief, the first certification focus at cooperates organization, CBTA cooperates, those organizations that intend as an employers that they have to implement CBTA within their organization, and whether these are airlines or cargo terminal operators, ground handling agents, freight forwarders and shippers. And they want to make sure that the trainings that they are providing to their employees is in compliance with the CBTA approach. So this certification focus on the employers that intend to implement CBTA within their organization and wants to be recognized for compliance with the training provisions and guidelines. The other 2 types of certification focus on organizations that want to commercialize their trainings activity and want to offer this training to the public with the intention to generate income out of it. The CBTA provider will eventually replace the ATS. It will focus on organizations like schools or training institutions that wants to provide competency-based training and assessment for a specific, well-defined job functions. What we see that today we have a network of 200 schools, and some of them are focusing on specific functions. For example, major part of our networks, we have a network of schools that are specialists in providing trainings for shippers and packers for specific category, for specific classes, or for specific UNs. So those organizations will be accredited to provide dangerous good trainings for specific, well-defined job functions based on their customer needs and also based on their capability. The third type of certification is CBTA Excellence. What we identified that we are moving from provisions of training courses into a needs to support the industry, not only with providing them the training, but supporting the industry with the entire development of the CBTA. And this is where it's created the needs to also have a network of organizations that are not only professional in providing dangerous good training courses, but are also professionals in providing developments and implementation solutions and services for those organizations that will be in a need not only to get a training, but also to get an external companies to help them in how to conduct the training need analysis and defines the training programs and other elements that related to the trainings program. The CBTA Excellence will be able, of course, to provide dangerous good trainings as the providers, but also will be positioned as an organization that has the right competency in place to provide dangerous good trainings and solutions for the developments and implementation of CBTA. So in terms of assessment scope and criteria, what is very important to say that at the end of the day, the CBTA Center is based on IATA Dangerous Good Manual, is based on our guidelines in Appendix H. So what we did in practice we looked into the dangerous good training provisions, we looked into the guidance document in Appendix H, and we transformed all these guidance document into a more practical documents that we can use to provide to organization to benchmark their existing training capability, and by doing so to identify the gaps, but also to identify opportunities for improvements based on the guidance document. We also looked into the requirements in the ICAO technical instructions, and the CBTA guidelines of ICAO, just in order for us to make sure that we are covering both. I must say that, as you all know, that the Dangerous Good Manual is a very comprehensive manual that go much more beyond what is in the ICAO technical instructions. It is the case with Appendix H, but just in order for us to make sure that we have the complete coverage of the two, we looked into the two documents in making sure that we are covering the entire contents when assessing those organizations. We identify different criteria in which we are going to focus through this assessment with those organizations that you can see. It's go from organization level up to the entire training program components, the quality systems, and the training's contents and personnel. So how is going to be done in reality? As I said, we developed an assessment checklist. The checklist contains about 150 questions. The scope of the checklist is different on whether it is an employer that wants to be assessed, a training provider, or a CBTA excellence. As I said, the checklist is based on the current Dangerous Good manual, so it's currently based on the 62 edition. We are making some revisions to our document as we talk, so that we make sure that as of 1st of January, our materials will completely reflect always the current edition of the Dangerous Good regulation. In terms of process, companies that will be willing to assess, we will apply a multi-step assessment process that will include 3 main phases. The first phase is the self-assessment. This is where we'll provide a company with the assessment checklist in order for them to conduct their own self-assessment, answer the question in the checklist, attach evidence document and reference documents in order for us to review it. And this is where we will start the assessment from our side. The assessment for our side will include 2 steps. The first step will be a remote review of the documents that you will provide us as part of your self-assessment. And the second step will be an actual assessment where there will be an interactive discussion between the assessor from IATA sides and your company, in order for us to go through your different documentation and processes with the intention not only to identify findings, but to help you identify the opportunity for improvements in order not only to meet the requirements of the CBTA, but go much more beyond it. At the end of the assessment, we will produce reports with the findings and opportunities for improvements for those organizations to work on them. Some of them you will have to implement, some of them you will have to address, and this is where it's very important to use these activities during the transition period, because what is currently a guidelines may become a mandatory after CBTA will come into effect by next year, by 2023. So at the end of the assessment, we will produce report with the findings, and this is where you will have to work on addressing those findings and opportunities for improvements. And once it will be done, we will schedule the final phase, which is the validation, where we will verify the implementation of those findings. That will lead into a certification for the organization for a period of 2 years to confirm that you are in compliance with the relevant requirements. It's very important that this is an accreditation process. You will not only be the only companies in the driving seat. IATA Assessor will work in close cooperation with the organization during all this accreditation process and journey in supporting you during that process to meet the requirements. So once you achieve the certification, this is where it's all starts, because achieving the certification is one thing, but we are leveraging on learning quality for performance improvements. So it's very important that those organizations will not only achieve the certification, but also will remain competent at all time to provide these trainings. That means that as part of the requirements, I would say, but also benefits of this program, we will make sure that we are providing annual refresher trainings for the instructors of those companies that will achieve this certification, with the intention that we are making sure that those instructors are always having the right knowledge and skills to conduct the trainings. It will involve different spot checks in making sure that those organizations continue to improve and to remain in compliance with the regulations. That it will require from those organizations to go through a reassessment every 24 months in order for us to make sure that they are meeting not only the dangerous goods trainings provisions and requirements, but also the program requirements. So I think this is my last slides. I think what is very, very important to say that CBTA is here. We are now in the interim period. As you can see that there are many aspects that are new, but many aspects that many companies are doing today, and it is new, not new for them. But it's very important to maximize the interim period and utilizing the right resources in order for you to prepare yourself to be in compliance by 2023 with the CBTA approach. We didn't touch much the benefits of the CBTA, but I encourage all of you to look on Appendix H. The Dangerous Goods Training Working Group did a very good job in the last 5-6 years in developing this document. It's very comprehensive. It stipulates the benefits for the employers, the benefits for the employees. So it's very important to look into this document and see on how your organization can benefit from it as an employer, but how you can provide much more effective training that will bring more benefits to your employees as well. So thank you very much for your participation.
Right. Thank you, Yaniv, for the insightful sharing. So I think we're actually a bit behind the schedule, about 10 minutes. Let's try to reorganize ourselves in terms of how we are going to answer some of the questions that's going to coming up. So far we have actually two speakers, Candy as well as Yaniv, who has presented his part for the presentation. To save a bit of time for the Q&A and to try to keep the webinar to be on schedule, feel free to type in your questions for Candy and Yaniv. So then both of the speakers can try to reply you in the chat, right? While then we keep for the verbal questions at the end of the presentations during the Q&A session. Right. So moving on, we will have Sergio Salaz, Manager Industrial Relation, to share with you on CIV Lithium Battery Program, which was launched very recently in October this year during the World Cargo Symposium. So Sergio, over to you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thanks, David. I've just shared my slides. Can you confirm they are on?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Great. So thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for this opportunity to speak to you. I'm delighted to speak to such a great audience today. So my name is Sergio Salaz, and I work as a lead certification for this new IATA certification program. I work together with Yaniv actually, and I'm going to take actually less than planned since we are behind schedule. I think I'm going to take around 20 minutes to speak to you about and give you the highlights of the CIV lithium battery, which is, as I mentioned, the new IATA certification program. So basically, next slide. All right. We at IATA, so safety is our number one priority. That's something we all know in aviation. And we at IATA, we are strong believers in safeguarding and enhancing the safety and the efficiency of our industry through standards and through best practices. We do disseminate these standards and best practices through various means. First of all, through our publications, and we also incorporate them in our training activities. But we also disseminate them through commercial solutions such as consulting, and you have just witnessed earlier on one of our commercial solutions, the DG Autocheck, which also incorporates a very strong standard existing today in the air cargo industry, namely the dangerous goods regulations. One of the means to disseminate the standards in the industry is also the certification programs of IATA, and this is what I'm going to speak about today on a specific topic of it. So as you probably know, IATA is running some widespread, well-known certification programs such as the safety audits for airlines or ground handlers. CIV, the Center of Excellence for Independent Validators, is one of our certification programs for the air cargo industry, and namely for those specific operations in the air cargo industry requiring expert handling. So it's got different lines of business under the CIV program, but all of them have a common goal, and that goal is to establish a globally consistent and recognized certification program based on the standards behind those specific operations. All of them also have a common methodology of validating and certifying the industry players, and they rely on a pool of independent validators. This pool is actually managed by IATA. The IATA is recruiting the independent validators, but they are then acting independently, individually, based on the standards of the program to certify the interested parties. I've mentioned the different lines of business under the CIV program. We have actually started in 2014 with CIV Pharma, then continued with CIV Live Animals in 2018, added CIV Perishables in 2019, and this year we have just launched the new lithium batteries CIV certification. All of these have one thing in common: they rely on some very strong standards as the backbones of each certification line under this big program. So I mentioned CIV Pharma as the first certification we started with. This is already a globally recognized program, globally adopted program with more than 400 individual companies who have already obtained certification, and many others in the pipeline. We truly believe that lithium batteries is going to follow that path. We see good development for the other CIV certification programs. All of them have been, they are born from an industry need and some concerns of the industry, which I'm going to cover in the specifics for CIV lithium batteries in the following slides. And also all of these certification programs, they are meant for those activities that require expert handling. So they are best positioned for a certification with the purpose of acknowledging the expert handling and the expertise of those companies who abide by the standards and the best practices. So a bit for the background on lithium batteries. David, we mentioned a few numbers in the beginning and a few facts. In very few words, this is a market with very big potential. It is actually expected to double. So the transportation of lithium batteries by air is expected to double in the next 5 years. And that's because the lithium has become an element of choice as power source for many supplier goods, electronics, and so on, due to its high energy, its capability to store high energy density. But then with this comes a risk. The risk is a risk of fire and explosion that can be the effect of various causes, such as punctured batteries, short circuit, or overheating of such batteries. So the risk is there. We note some very concerning phenomena in the industry, such as the manufacturing of poor quality or counterfeit batteries, so non-compliant batteries. Then there is the misdeclaration or non-declaration of lithium batteries, which can be either unintentional due to the lack of awareness, or in some cases even willful, just to avoid the premium costs associated to transporting dangerous goods by air. So all these things resulted in quite a few confirmed incidents and accidents in the last 5 years, close to 300. I think David mentioned even higher, which are the latest figures. Actually, in 3 cases there were fatalities, and what we feel is that we are actually sitting on the top of an iceberg, because we fail to see the real challenge and the real concern there, with all those near misses and non-confirmed cases. Actually, earlier on this or last month, during our World Cargo Symposium, the head of cargo of Qatar, Guillaume Halleux, he delivered a very concerning speech where he described in detail three near misses that his airline experienced in recent times, which could have resulted in very bad events, and it was pure chance that these things didn't happen, and they were the effect of improper declaration of lithium batteries. There is the challenge and the concern. So obviously with this comes the need to abide by the regulations and the best practices. But on top of that, the industry players, they require proper processes and procedures, as well as proper infrastructure and staff competency to deal with these cases. And not only that, but we feel as an industry that there is need for visibility, to offer visibility to those who choose to work by the regulations and choose to apply the best practices and the expert handling for lithium batteries. So this is why, on top of the regulations, a more robust program was needed to address the lithium battery concern, and this is the CAB lithium battery program, certification program. And the main goal of it is to equip and educate the supply chain into observing their and meeting the safety obligations with observing the standards and the best practices. So a few words about how this program works. First of all, the objectives are obviously to reduce the risk associated with this challenge of transporting lithium batteries and improve the safety in our operations. And we do that through observing the standards and the best practices, educating the industry partners and the staff in particular, elevating their knowledge about these regulations and requirements, and eventually give visibility to those who choose to obtain an expertise level of expertise for this certification. So I mentioned what the challenges are, and I'm going to repeat them briefly. It's first of all lack of awareness with shippers mainly, and then the concerns around undeclared or misdeclared lithium batteries, as well as the importance of proper packaging, proper marking of such shipments. And with this, we have defined the target or the focus of this certification program for phase one to be addressed to shippers and freight forwarders who are responsible actually for classifying and for packing, marking, labeling, and declaring lithium batteries. As a second step, we are also contemplating to define the requirements of the program for carriers and their handlers as a means to produce a fully certified supply chain under lithium batteries certification. So the CIB lithium batteries certification is based on an assessment, and the assessment is essentially based on a checklist, just like Yannick mentioned before for CBTA. IATA has developed a very thorough checklist for assessing your competency in lithium batteries handling. This checklist is addressing more than 300 topics, and it is the base of the assessment activity carried out by the independent validator. So the checklist itself is targeting various aspects of your business, starting from the organizational structure and the management, going to the quality and safety management, people and training processes, and then going into the details of your operations, infrastructure, and the equipment available for handling lithium batteries. Also the procedures and the documentation present for that. So the whole certification follows a few steps similar to CBTA, but common for other CIV certification programs. We start with a preparation phase where we assemble the team. You nominate a champion for this certification, and we exchange some high-level data. Then we train the people and we equip them with knowledge necessary for knowing the standards and for successfully passing the certification. This is the minimum requirement here is to have 2 staff trained on lithium battery safety logistics management, which is a 3-day course IATA is offering, also on a virtual environment. And after this, the third phase is the assessment phase, where the validator is performing an on-the-side assessment, and based is actually producing a finding report based on the assessment, and also a plan of implementation, which is giving you the findings and the recommendations on how to close those findings. As Yannick mentioned, throughout the whole process, the validator is going to work closely with you to close those findings, and as soon as the findings are closed, we can move to the fourth phase, which is the validation phase, whereby we confirm that you are compliant with the certification program, and we issue the certificate for you. This is going to be valid for 2 years, so there is a recertification every 2 years with a refresher training for the staff and the reassessment of your standing. So following the certification, there is the visibility which we are offering, and I mentioned this is important for the industry, to identify the parties offering expert handling for leadership, all those CIV certified companies in our global IATA one source platform. And there's also good publicity around it. We are marketing the developments of our CIV certification. Here on the screen, you can see a picture of our ceremony of handing out the certificate for our first joiner under the CIV lithium batteries. This happened at the World Cargo Symposium last month with the freight forwarder Cobalt Logistics, which I mentioned, it's our first client. So on the benefits of CIV lithium batteries, besides the recognition of your operational excellence, obtaining this certification also ensures that you are compliant with the standards and applying the best practices in the industry, which means more efficient operations for you, standardized operations. We also contribute to elevating your staff competency through the training, and we obviously reduce the risks and the costs associated to any possible incidents that may occur for you. So in terms of the status of the program, I mentioned this is a rather new program launched this June. We already have the first certified freight forwarder, Cobalt Logistics. We have worked on a proof of concept for phase 2 with LATAM Airlines, and we have many discussions and many companies interested in, so they are in the pipeline for implementation, basically from all regions of the globe. And in terms of implementation, we do this either individually for each company interested to do that, but we also apply the community approach, just as for other CIV initiatives. So basically, where a location is interested to obtain the certification as a group, giving the choice for other industry players to choose in between a multitude of different certified companies, different types of supply chain partners. We apply this community approach, and thereby we certify a group of companies, and they also get to share the costs related to that. And with this, thank you very much. This was my last slide. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm leaving my contacts here with you, and they will be shared by the organizers. So feel free, any of you who are interested to pursue this further, feel free to contact me directly. I believe there is also a Q&A session, so we are happy to answer your questions there, unless the time has passed already for that, in which case we will address them individually in the chat. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sergio, for the insightful sharing. I think we are still going to allocate some time for Q&A because it's quite difficult to get everyone together. So I'll probably give about 5 minutes for questions to be asked. And I think thanks to Candy and Yaniv, a lot of questions has been asked. So I'm going to look at the questions that are still fresh on the screen. May I learn more about the training syllabus after CBTA is launched? Specifically for CTO personnel, does the scope covers accepting dangerous goods and handling cargo within a warehouse sufficient for them? Any other topics needs to be covered? So can we have Yaniv or Candy probably to answer this question from Timothy?
Yes, thank you, David. I'll try to attempt to it. Actually, I'm not quite sure, Timothy. If you could just clarify, are you referring to a training syllabus that is relevant to a CTO, or are you actually referring to the syllabus that is within the scope of CBTA Center certification? Just want to make sure that we are understanding the question correctly.
I think let's answer the question or the presumption that is for CTO.
Okay, then in that case, it really depends on the specific CTO on what the functions that they have got. So if you're saying to me a group of personnel is actually having a function of accepting dangerous goods, then of course, then accepting dangerous goods should be in your training syllabus. So it really depends on how you're dividing your functions and the jobs of different personnel that you have got.
Right. So if I may further paraphrase this, so I think it's more dependent on the job function of the personnel to tailor-make the kind of training program for them in that sense. Right.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So next question from Mala Voni. Is it available in all countries if no CBTA training center in specific country? If there's no CBTA training center in the country, is there an option for online training? That's the question.
I can take it. I can say first that our ultimate goal in IATA is to have a network of CBTA center across the world. So we will be more than happy if companies will share with us in which location they are willing to have CBTA center companies so that we can work together with them and identify a potential partner so that we will have a local ambassador to respond to the training needs in that specific local market.
Right. Going for one last question. If anyone has still any last burning question to ask, if not, I'll proceed to close this session. Okay. So let me move on to the closing. Right, I hope you enjoyed the presentation and that you have some takeaways. Before we end this session, I would like to take this opportunity to recap the main IATA cargo activities in 2021. IATA has conducted numerous webinars over the past year to support the community, and we do hope that we are able to do more next year. So I usually share the event invites through email. And every month I'll send an update on the latest development from IATA. So if you're missing any of this, please write to me. I'll be quite happy to add you to my distribution list. Thank you. We have come to the end of our webinar. We will leave the chat on for another 5-10 minutes for those who have questions. Alternatively, you can also engage me through my email that is seen on the screen. I'll direct them to the subject matter experts accordingly. So thank you very much for all your time.